if I do? It's a question my mother's been, well, she used to ask all the time. Neil, what are you doing with your life? Don't know, Mum. So my name is Neil Smith, and I am the CVO, which stands for Chief Visionary Officer, apparently, CVO of a company called Rift Valley Studios, based here in Los Angeles, California. Rift Valley Studios has been dealing with the making of visual stories for many years, and last year we got involved in the making of VR, virtual reality stories. And I have to say, it's become the most exciting and engrossing thing I've done in a long, long time. William Shakespeare. As you probably can tell, I'm not from these here parts. I'm from back east, a long way back east, in England in fact. My mother was an avid reader and an avid Shakespeare fan. I learned to read at the tender age of 4, and my mother, we had the children's version of Shakespeare, which we read at 5 and 6, and I was in my first Shakespearean school play at 8. In fact, my middle name is William. Not by any chance, right? My mother, as I say, was a fan of Shakespeare, and she decided to call me Neil Smith with William in the middle, purely because of Billy Boy. I particularly like The Tempest. And there's something about King Lear, which every time I read that and study or see it, it strikes a chord in my heart, and I always learn something new from what King Lear had to go through in order to start the new life. And it just depends. The nice thing about Shakespeare is this: there's something for everyone. The themes that Shakespeare explores are themes of human skullduggery and trials and tribulations that have been run through humanity since the beginning of time. So I think many modern movies pull on the themes that Shakespeare extracted from his experiences in Elizabethan England. I tell you, one of the movies I really did enjoy, funnily enough, and I didn't think I was going to enjoy it, but I thought it played very, very well, was actually Shakespeare in Love. And I think one of the reasons why that worked really well, I think it was written by Stoppard, right? Tom Stoppard. And Tom, brilliant guy. But the way that they interwove both Shakespeare's life and the love relationship and how he got his ideas for his stories, to me that was actually a brilliant bit of the play within the play, the movie about the movie, the story about the story. Humans have been telling stories for 50,000 years, and story is one of the most important ways we pass on knowledge, truth, wisdom and understanding to each other and to our children, and sometimes even our parents, God forbid, right? So story is an absolutely fundamental aspect of human experience and humanity in the broadest sense of the word. Originally we used charcoal in a cave wall. People got the story, they were entertained, they sat round the fire, tell me that one again, Dad, I suspect they said, right? So story is a fundamental aspect of human existence. We learn so much through stories. And the medium and the ways in which we learn it have changed and evolved over the last couple of thousand years. So we've gone from a very oral tradition, and Shakespeare was totally oral, right? Not many people read Shakespeare. You just went to the theatre and listened to it. And then we went to a more visually dominant one, through books, through movies, through TV. And each time, each of those new art forms revisits the underlying themes that we've been dealing with for thousands and thousands of years and tells them in a slightly different way so that the cohorts and the new generations coming out will have a new experience of some fundamental truths of human nature and human existence. So storytelling in its many forms and guises has morphed and changed and evolved. And we're now at a very interesting time. And I suspect that if young William was to come back, incarnated in some shape or form, and was to sit down and put one of these VR goggles on, or play with the Oculus Rift, or have a look at this 360-degree camera, I suspect he would be damn amazed. How we tell those stories and how we experience them, that's what changes. But this new form of visual experience is quite fundamentally different to anything we've had before. Mostly we've been going to the theatre, sitting in a movie theatre, sitting in the front room, watching TV, and it's a very passive experience. You sit there, the screen's in front of you, it comes to you. And we've been doing that, and we've learned that as a form of experiencing. But VR is not like that. VR isn't so much a question of watching, it's more a question of being in it. If you get it right, you will introduce Shakespeare to a whole new generation, a whole new way, which will allow them to experience the fundamental truths that underlie most of his plays. So yeah, VR, I think, is almost tailor-made for Shakespeare in the round, only it's not so much Shakespeare in the round now, it's more Shakespeare in the sphere, right? So spherical 360-degree Shakespeare, it is going to be absolutely stunning. The whole sensibility of the Elizabethan era and the Renaissance, it was a freeing of human mind from the chains and shackles of the church. And artists like Shakespeare and many artists around that time across Europe were starting to question, who defines reality? Whose hegemony are we going to follow? And through his plays and his jabbing and his testing of power structures, relationships, all the things we have to deal with on a daily basis, he brought those concerns to ordinary people through the rough and tumble of Elizabethan theatre, which was pretty rough and certainly very smelly. Shakespeare has always been, I think, an integral part of one's aesthetic and one's cultural awareness of the relationships between people, government, violence, sex, drugs. Not rock and roll, but he was interested in music. We live in a time when people are questioning all kinds of things. Religion, power, government, countries. The internet has opened up people to different kinds of experiences, right? And in those times of tumultuous change and evolution/revolution, are there fundamental truths that we can glean and learn from? And I think that in the arts, all kinds of arts, poetry, painting, dance, there are fundamental aspects of human truth and existence which are important for us to always remember and support. Because humans without art, what are we? We're machines or we're animals. Well, some of us are animals anyway, but let's not go to that. But seriously, art is such an integral part of what makes us human. We can't do without it. We can't do without it, and Shakespeare is an integral part of theatre and informs modern visual storytelling, for sure. So yeah, if we lose art, we lose our humanity. And do younger generations want to experience art in new forms? Sure. So let's help them through YouTube, through gaming, through whatever else they chat and Facebook. Let's help them experience those fundamental truths, and I think that this device with these headsets will open up Shakespeare to a whole new generation of people who may or may not think it was relevant to their lives. You sit in front of a screen and there's a fourth wall between you and your experience. I know when I get my cell phone out that it's an integral, there's a division between me and the medium, right? We know that here's my eyes, here's the screen, and I'm looking at it, okay? Now this is where VR gets very, very interesting. There is no fourth wall. When you put these goggles on, you don't see the dividing line between you and the visual story. You're in it. And because of the overlap, it tricks the brain on a neurological level so that you have a very visceral response. So these goggles, it's not like looking at 3D TV, it's not like looking at this close up. It transforms your basic relationship to the media. The other cool thing is this takes you to places where you would never ordinarily go. On Mars at the moment, NASA have a thing called the rover, which is going around Mars, and by the way, it happens to have a spherical camera on the top of it. And I've seen many photos from Mars taken by the rover with a spherical camera, right? But you see them in 2D. There is now on the Rift some VR versions of those photos that are taken from Mars. And you are on that rover going around Mars, and I can tell you, it is amazing. Are we ever going to go to Mars? Probably not me. Two things happen that are going to make this a reality. There's a thing called Moore's Law. Moore's Law, Gordon Moore was the CEO of Intel. Gordon wrote a paper in '64 which essentially said every 2 years, 18 months to 2 years, the power of a computer doubles, but the price halves. And if you think about the microprocessor, you think about that phone you've got in your hand, there's more compute power in there than in the mainframes we used to sell in the 70s and 80s, right? So Moore's Law is the doubling of compute power, but the halving of price. And it used to be only about CPU, but now it's also about graphics cards, GPUs, it's about networking, it's about storage, it's about all the things that go up to make the digital revolution. So Moore's Law has finally caught up with the price performance. So the gaming industry is going to drive the adoption of this. A certain Mr. Zuckerberg, who owns a little company called Facebook, which you probably have heard of, put these goggles on last March 2014. And within 2 weeks of putting these goggles on, he gave those two 22-year-old dudes from Long Beach, California, a check for $2 billion. I don't think Mr. Zuckerberg is in the charity business. This is mobile VR. Lots of people have mobile phones. Lots of people are going to be able to afford to spend $200 or $300 on a head-mounted display, which they can take anywhere. You can sit in Starbucks. Already certain airlines are starting to offer these to first-class passengers. Hopefully in tourist class we'll get those as well soon, right? So that combination of Samsung, two young dudes from Long Beach, and Mr. Zuckerberg are going to ensure that tethered gaming VR and mobile VR takes off in a way which will make it much more accessible to everybody in the world. Okay. So as you can see, it's like a ski mask, but with two lenses, and these are specially shaped lenses so that when you put the flat screen in the back of it, you get 120-degree field of view. So you get a totally immersive view. You're not just looking at a small screen. It's like seeing the whole of this room, including peripheral vision, up and down and all around you. The other cool thing is head tracking. So when you move your head, Oculus has special head tracking, the scene moves with you. So when you look up, you can see up into the top of the theatre. When you look to the left and right, you can see who's sitting next to you. If you're in a war movie, you can see the baddies coming up behind you. You can be in a tank. So we have the goggles, and these are the tethered ones, and it's just like a ski mask. You put them on, and bam, my God, you're in that world. And this is a racing car simulator. I'm now in Brands Hatch, and I'm about to start racing. And I look around, I can see the crowd up there, I can see the trees over here. Oh! The light's about to go green. Hold on, and I'm off. And we're racing down there. Oh, someone's coming on the outside, around the bend. Oh God, no! That's what it's like. You're not watching a racing car. You're in the racing car, racing everybody, right? And if you're on that spaceship, Interstellar, going through space, you are going through the black hole of time-space continuum, or something like that. It's a shame my mother died a few years ago. It would have been cool to send her this, because she really did love Shakespeare.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and she said, Neil, well that's, and so, because she used to just thought, nothing would ever come of me because I was a black sheep of the family. She said, see, she would have said, Neil, see, that's why I taught you all the things I taught you, and finally you did something useful with it.